a year ago, about this time, I had initiated conversations with Don Crawford, and met with him to stroll around Windjammer Park and discuss possibilities. And he showed me the type of bench that the park is currently using, and indicated there was an individual that did the plaque making. And then things stalled out. I believe he took a new position out on the peninsula. I was given new names to contact. I've had some email back and forth, but not really moving forward with the hope of donating a memorial bench for my parents, Dottie and Irv Luce. In the school district, teachers, principal, librarian. If some of you are long time Oak Harbor people, they might have been your teacher. Anyway,
or my principal.
Yes, yes.
We'll talk later.
Okay.
A great couple.
Anyway, yeah, I agree. Very fortunate to have such wonderful parents. Anyhow, so I've been online and read the memorial brochure, I think it's from 2017, and some of the criteria for tried to capture the essence of what y'all are looking for, kind of thing, but I don't really see a way forward. Like, is there a form to fill out to submit for approval? Is there a letter to be written and sent to a particular individual? How to know where spots are available, maybe not just Windjammer Park, but other sites throughout Oak Harbor's vast park system, blah, blah, blah. And my efforts have stalled because nobody was saying. So, anybody can offer me guidance on to what
Should I
to do.
respond?
I would. I'd love for you to respond to it.
So we're in the process of developing all that. Like you mentioned, we have a policy that exists online from 2017. There is no form or application. I think in the past they would just contact the park manager, right, and just and work with them. So that was a discussion point on this commission's agenda last time to talk about that memorial policy and what that form looks like. So that's something we're developing. But yeah, you can get with Tally right there.
You've emailed me before. I remember your emails.
I was hopefully trying to be aware, because we truly are very interested, but not pushy. So
We'll keep working on it. We'll get a plan together here pretty soon. I
Okay.
can see it. It's moving forward. It's just.
But in the meantime, we can follow up with you on a placement. If it's, can you just tell me real quick what's the memorial you're looking at doing?
we were thinking a bench, but I know, as in all of life, it's a process. The park, I'm sure, is a process. Would be amenable to maybe a tree if that seems to fit better with the.
Are you open to other parks than Windjammer?
No, maybe, yeah.
Because right now Windjammer's got a lot of construction coming up in the future, different phases, and that's one of the technical challenges we have to deal with Windjammer is if we put it in, are we going to end up having to move it later because we're building something new and feature in the park?
Right. I appreciate that too. And I'm willing to wait if a new design affords itself possibilities for benches. Again, it's like knowing where is the site available, and if you don't know because the park is in transition, then that helps to know that too. But I don't want to fall off the radar either. So to know what might be available in other parks. We're open. We're not. We just want to get it done.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll make sure we follow up with you.
Thank you. And you are?
I'm Brian Smith. I'm the new Parks and Recreation Director. So the city just created a Parks and Recreation department at the end of last year. So I'm about 2 months in on it. And so we pulled in our parks maintenance as well as our senior services, the marina, And then we've added on the recreation department, arts and special events as well. In fact, this board is getting a update into a Parks and Recreation Board from the Parks Board. So a lot of things changing, a lot of updates.
Right.
We have a new system called Civic Rec. They'll be online user facing, so you'll be able to go online and fill out a form like that. And it goes in instead of having to go back and forth with phone calls and all that kind of stuff. So we're big push of mine is just getting us kind of up to the 21st century in user friendliness and intuitiveness on how to get services done and how to connect with those kind of things.
Okay. Thank you.
Were there any other comments from the public? Did we have anybody else hop on the line at all?
No.
Okay. Then, thank you for being here. I appreciate that. So let's go ahead and move on to discussion items. We have the Gary Oak Society up first.
Should I just come to the table?
Yeah.
Or, okay. I feel plenty out of my back to folks. So hi, I'm Laura Renninger. Nice to meet you all. Last time I was at a Parks Board meeting, there was a whole bunch of different faces. So it's good to be here. And I figured before I presented this binder to Parks, I would just make some comments to kind of bring you all up to date with how our group has integrated with Parks in the past. So a little bit of background information on how we help to keep the oaks in Oak Harbor. So since 2015, we've been planting young oaks in many open spaces in city parks. As of today, we have a total of 84 young oaks in the parks. And we've partnered for interpretive signs being made in 3 different park locations: Smith Park, Windjammer, and the Post Office Native Garden Park. By partnering, I mean we've designed or partially designed, and in 2 cases completely funded the installation of the interpretive signs. The Native Plant Pocket Park and at the Oak Harbor Post Office site, we've been ongoing caretakers of that since 2017. And there are about 35 species of native plants at that site, and they're all labeled, which is the only place in Oak Harbor where people can go to exclusively see native plants. In 2018, we gave constructive recommendations for landscape plans for phase 1 of Windjammer Park. And we encouraged the city to plant alternatives in order to eliminate potential problems and die-off of installed tree species. For example, replacing the tupelo with non-fruiting tupelo species, replacing the ash tree because of the ash borer insect, also then replacing the non-native hybrid oak tree and the magnolia trees, with recommendations to plant Gary oaks and red maples. In 2021, well, we've participated in past Arbor Day celebrations, but in 2021, the year of the pandemic, we had a big push to promote 2021 as the year of the oak, which was the 170th anniversary of the naming of Oak Harbor. And that was a way in the midst of the pandemic shutdown to still keep the word going and keep that thought alive of, you know, this is what our town is named for. We created soundoaks.org, a mapping website with specific GPS data on Gary Oak locations within the city and beyond, so that anyone can hop on that site and go and take a look and zoom in and say, oh, well, there's 5 oaks in that park and there's 6 oaks on this street or whatever. So a very useful tool.
What's that site called?
Sound Oaks.
Sound Oak.
Soundoaks.org, plural oaks. In 2022, we did a presentation to City Council regarding the history of the Gary Oaks in Oak Harbor. And during events like the Easter egg hunt in Smith Park or having booths, for example, at Holland Happening or Music Fest, we have the ability to provide outreach to teach young and old alike about Gary Oak trees using interactive exhibits. Things like a tree ring poster. We give out coloring pages to kids on little crayon packs. We have books like this that teach about Gary Oak trees growing. We have a habitat branch that's a woodpecker branch that a downy woodpecker made its home in, that we show people just about how extremely valuable. Gary oaks are as habitat trees. And we have acorns that they can grind up to show people that the oak trees are actually a food source, a protein source, and that kind of thing. Besides that, we do and have been advocating for Smith Park. We donated a bench to the park way back in the day, and we began a native plant restoration plan, mostly concentrating on native flowering bulbs. That was in 2019. In 2019, the then Parks Board and then Parks Director approved what was called a deferred mowing plan, which was to not mow down the grass in the park until the native wildflowers had a chance to bloom and set their seed. And that has been partially followed and not followed, and the signs are still up that say that there's a deferred mowing will take place, but our group is a little uncertain moving forward. What's that going to look like? Is there going to be maybe a compromise of leaving a few like irregularly shaped patches, maybe in the northern area of the park, that they will remain untouched so the bloom can happen, and then just mow down the rest of the park, especially around the merry-go-round or whatnot? Again, so that's a question I'm coming to you with.
Can I elaborate on that a little bit,
Yeah.
Laura? So the trouble we have with that program is that come 4th of July, the fire chief gets really nervous with all that tall grass in that park in such a neighborhood area. So I think the long-term plan will be to do some pockets. We'll designate pocket areas so it's more controllable if it ever did catch on fire. But to have the whole park, it's kind of scary come July.
Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, definitely value and just, you know, again, like I said, having some kind of a compromise. There, we do have oral history from old timers that remember pre-lawnmower that park was a sea of blooms. And so, you know, hoping to achieve some kind of a balance would definitely make it a magnet park for the public. Okay, so that's that. Also, the previous parks manager had a proposal called a Smith Park Management Plan, which was a big many-page draft, and it encompasses things like the mowing, native plant restoration, who's doing what, pruning in the park, all kinds of things. And so again, our team did sit in on that and we gave input, but we're at a loss as to, is that plan going to just be stuck on the shelf and simplify with some kind of compromise on the deferred mowing, or are we going to go take it to the next level or not? The other question that we had, and this is regarding the tree tour. Pardon me while I grab these brochures. One of the things our group did is we came up with this tree tour so that, and it's free and it's self-guided. Brian, you've got one before. To allow people to see some of the most largest iconic public trees and appreciate them themselves, have time to pause and reflect. There's about 10, there's 10 or 12 of them, and one of them, the locations is Smith Park and the oak mural on Jensen Street. So one of the thoughts that our special projects guy had was if we would have permission from, because we were again trying to promote this and have this be something that visitors and citizens alike could participate in more fully than they have already. And that is the idea of the Gary Oaks Society posting a small sign underneath the two deferred mowing signs in Smith Park, one to the north and one to the south, with some kind of like QR reader that would show people, hey, there's this tour, it exists. Here's a QR code, and you can glom onto that with your phone, and then you can explore without them having to have a paper copy. So I'm not sure if I need to bring this to another parks meeting and formally present it, but that is an idea that's floating out there. Lastly, we have a project which one of our members has spent a lot of time researching at the UW Archives and Special Collections Library for a proposal to nominate Smith Park to the Washington State Historic Register. This park, it predates the city of Oak Harbor. I'm not going to launch into take a lot of time on that, but it's definitely a huge asset to Oak Harbor having this park comprised of nothing but Gary oak trees. I don't think there's anything like it in the state. And certainly with that history, it provides a solid reason to have this nominated, and it would be an economic stimulus to the downtown core. For example, when I'm a visitor, my husband and I recently visited Charleston, South Carolina. We wanted to go to some of the historic places, and we wanted to see their live oaks and that kind of thing. So knowing where these historic places are would definitely be a boon there. As I understand it, the Historic Commission kind of went by the wayside, so there is not that legislative body anymore. But we can definitely, the proposal has been written and we can definitely take it to the next level. We need input from city admin and the mayor to kind of, decide, is this going to council now or what? So that's that. Besides the brochures, I just wanted to show you a couple other little things. One, if you've ever seen a baby oak tree before, this is a baby oak. So go ahead and pass that around. Right there, it just looks like a little stick in the ground, but that's what a baby oak tree looks like when it's first growing. And you can definitely tell it needs protection from the elements and from people and from predators because it's quite vulnerable when it's that small. Hence the reason why when you look at the trees we planted around town, they have some kind of protection around them, either a blue solar tube or a wooden cage. And this is Gary, who is our little acorn mascot. He's Gary the acorn guy. He's pretty popular with the kids. And he's just another fun little element that we have to introduce people to the idea of Gary Oaks. So with that said, we developed this binder. It came to our attention that many vital pieces of information that the city needed regarding Gary Oaks or partnerships with our organization was missing. And so we are presenting this binder to Brian and the team, and I'll just let you know what it's got in it, just some of the highlights. It's got several brochures. It's got the number and name of contacts for our group for the city to have, the City of Oak Harbor Oak Tree Protection Code, our MOUs, our legal things we have with the city, the story of Oak Harbor and the Gary Oak, an article from the DNR's Urban Forestry newsletter that we were highlighted in, the Year of the Oak information, the Ogos and City of Oak Harbor Parks oak seedling list by location, how our tree protection methods with diagrams, and the document planting and maintenance of Gary Oak seedlings and saplings. A lot of information pertains to Smith Park, again, our original 2019 proposal for deferred mowing. Excerpts from other city parks like Oak Bay, BC in Canada and Salem, Oregon that do deferred mowing type of activities. A draft of the Smith Park management plan that I mentioned. A proposal for the granite name sign, which we talked about, gosh, maybe 5 years ago for the south end of the park where people would enter up Jensen Street looking at the mural and then enter where the path starts on the little edge of the white fence is to have some kind of name there so people know, oh, I'm in Smith Park now. And then, of course, the Smith Park Washington Historic Register submission and the Centennial Grove proposal document, a newspaper article, Avenue of the Oaks resolution and newspaper article, giant acorn information. And then lastly, and I think very importantly, the 2003, so this was 20 years ago, the City of Oak Harbor paid an arborist to do this survey. It was called the City of Oak Harbor Oak Heritage Tree Program document, and also the City of Oak Harbor Tree Care Information Workshop syllabus. So that's very important for you to have as well. And we just hope that this will all be helpful. Moving forward, it can be digitalized and kept on hand, and then you'll have the binder for easy reference. Any questions to me?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, Laura. I love the idea of Smith Park getting that historic certification, and especially the QR code with this. I think this would be really great.
That would be a really easy thing to do. And soon. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
So
So next up, we have Arbor Day planning.
If it's all right, why don't we switch these just because they segue in nicely. We want to do Tree City USA, and then we'll talk a little bit about the plan.
Yeah, go for it.
So I'll turn time over to Bob Bailey, who is one of our park specialists and is becoming our city arborist. It's a new position for the city. Bob?
So I'm Bob Bailey. I've been here with the city for, a total of 3 years. 2 years ago, I worked for the city for 2 years, from 16 to 18, and then I went to work for the city of Bellingham as the lead arborist for 4 years, and I'm back. Hoping to become, as far as I know, the first on-staff parks arborist for the city of Oak Harbor. So just to give you a little bit of my background, I've been a certified arborist since 2003, utility specialist since 2005. That's another designation through the ISA, which is the International Society of Arboriculture. I'm tree assessor qualified. I started with trees many, many years ago. Was a wildland firefighter, was a utility specialist, utility arborist for 12 years. And then came to work for the city here, like I said, in 16 and 18. That was mainly, I think it was helpful that I was a certified arborist because in 2015, the city was part of the DNR tree inventory program. So the city got a massive tree inventory. And one of the recommendations was to have a full-time arborist on staff. So to help get my foot in the door here, the designation didn't come back then. And I wanted to get more training for tree climbing and just more of the hands-on stuff. So I went to work in Bellingham, like I said, as the arborist up there for 4 years. And I'm back here. I live here. I've lived here the whole time, commuted to Bellingham, but I want to do my part here for the city I live in. So to segue into Tree City USA. I don't know if anybody, people are familiar. It's a designation that we're working on getting the 20th consecutive year as a Tree City USA designation. And basically, overall, what the main criteria is having an arborist on staff, having a tree program, and spending part of the budget being over $2 per capita for spending for tree maintenance through citywide. So we met that criteria. Oak Harbor, we spent what turned out to be $2.47 per capita, which was a total of $61,000 and change last year. That's with the Parks Department, Streets Department, kind of overall everything in the city that happened. But we put a good chunk of change. They wanted to account for hours worked, volunteer hours, training hours. We met all those between my training last year that I went to, new equipment we bought last year, me having the arborist certification, be on staff was a big help. That we have a parks board, all of you. And we have tree ordinance, of course, that goes towards it, which Brandon and I are going to be looking at and hopefully strengthening a bit and maybe updating a little bit going forward. Anybody have any questions so far as the Tree City USA stuff? I think it's a great designation to have as a city, especially 20 years running. I think it's pretty awesome. A big help from Gary Oak Society with everything you guys do, like volunteer hours, trees planted, everything. It's been a big help. I guess with the lack of an official tree program with the Parks Department, you guys have been a big help. it definitely brings notoriety to the city. It brings more awareness of our tree program, and that we're going in the right direction. Planting more trees for the future is a really big, great thing. So,
What kind of timeline do you have on the certification? You're working towards it now, is that?
no, I'm sorry. I should have said I submitted it March 2nd, our application for 2022. So I haven't heard back. I just emailed the contact with the Department of Natural Resources. She said there was a glitch in their software. They were supposed to send out an update last week to let us know. We haven't received anything, but she'll be sending that out soon to let us know. So hopefully we'll know by the next park board meeting that we have been approved. I also applied for a first-time supplementary award for the growth award for the city of Oak Harbor. So that's just that we added so much last year. We planted so many trees. It's not the main award, but it's supplemental, which should be nice to get that award as well. So
Going through the process is really helpful and informative because it speaks to a lot of things that Laura talked about, where, you know, we look at what policies do we have in place. Let's look at the code. What does the code say about maintenance for trees, both on private land and also public land, especially right of ways? A lot of cities, the adjacent property owner is responsible for maintenance, removal of trees in the right of way adjacent to the property. That language is a little fuzzy in our code. So shoring that up, making sure that we have designated budget specifically especially for things like tree removal and plantings, which can be very cost prohibitive for residents, especially if it's a mature tree. Looking at and evaluating the health of trees and be able to take proactive measures. So like a tree, especially if they're older trees and we start seeing disease or pests, different things like that, then we can address it early on. And having Bob go through certifications and training, and specifically being able to go through in our GIS system, have our tree layer inventory and mapped out, and be able to identify and keep track of some of those goes a huge way in cost savings for the city, in avoiding having to remove especially large stature trees, which everyone hates. This is long before my time, but I've heard all about, you know, the Gary oak that we had down by the post office and removal of that. Now, sometimes trees, you know, they come to the end of their life, and for safety reasons, we do need to remove them. But there's a lot that we can do to extend the useful life of trees in the community. Save the city and especially residents a lot of money with maintenance and removal and replanting, but also make sure that we have a good tree canopy that softens and, you know, beautifies the city. We're really good at hardscaping things when we put in infrastructure, but we're going to have Bob help out with a lot of the planning, especially landscape planning around our infrastructure improvements and street improvements, to make sure that, you know, it's not just a great, beautiful street, but, you know, a street that you would want to walk along that doesn't add to ecological impacts by removing wildlife habitat and things like that.
yeah, that's a big part of this planning ahead, putting the right trees in the right place, making sure they have the room to grow. That all starts with bigger tree beds, more on the front end, so you can keep long-term trees. I think a lot of cities, the way they plan is the tree cycle is 15 to 20 years, and then they cut the trees down and remove them, replace them with new ones, where it'd be nice to have some lasting, you know, 60 to 100 years for a nice canopy. So that's the way I see going forward in the future, is planting long-term trees, not the turnover for the less desirable trees. Get the right trees in the right place. Big one.
But there's a lot that needs to be updated. Like, we haven't updated our what do we call it, our recommended tree list for trees that are acceptable, that do well in this climate, versus trees that we want to avoid because they can cause problems or they're invasive or different things like that.
Well, also planning ahead with trees, with the changing climate that we seem to have, with drier periods in the summertime, and getting a little bit hotter. Planting trees that are doing well in the climate that's maybe further south of us that are already dealing with that, finding those species and planting them here now, just so that we're looking ahead 20 to 50 years, planting the right stuff. So it's going to survive if we do have change.
Yeah, definitely one thing we're looking at is, where we haven't had to have irrigation systems before, suddenly we're finding, wow, we need to maybe look at better irrigation. So putting in inventory that is water conservative and conscious, things that we haven't really had to deal with in the Northwest before, right? So it'll be interesting to see in the next few years if we start seeing more and more of what we would consider severe weather here as more typical weather with the seasonal changes.
Any questions on any of that?
I have a question. The award that you mentioned that you had submitted for, was that like for a certain amount increase in the urban tree canopy type award, or?
Yeah, there was different criteria that was based on tree planting. Let's see. Positions added to the city as far as the arborist position. Yeah, it's based on growth. So anything that was new last year that we added, and it wasn't nearly as involved as the Tree City USA, but it's a supplemental to it under the same Arbor Day Foundation. So yeah, it was based mainly on tree growth training. So I went to a conference last year that got us some points. Just
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Studies have been shown that correlate high tree canopy to increased quality of life in urban settings. And so if we can show that, that's a 2 thumbs up for our city. And I would also like to add that we're the only tree city on Whidbey Island. In fact, I think in a radius, because I looked it up, and when you go to Arbor Day, you can look and see. And I think there's only like 12,000 cities in the state of Washington that are Arbor Day certified. So of all the cities in Washington state, that we are continuing to remain a Tree City USA is really, really good. That's really good. And the last thing I'd like to say is, and most of you probably already know this, but once Scary Oak trees are established, they are drought tolerant. Thanks.
And that's all kind of a good segue into our next thing. Half of this is looking at our policies and procedures and what the city has as inventory. Well, that's all well fine. That's part of what our work is. But the other half of it is celebrating us as a Tree City USA. How do we promote it? How do we educate the public on the importance of a good urban canopy, the value of niche species like the Gary Oak in our community? How do we get the community involved and activated and engaged in a lot of these different organizations that do such great work in helping us with our tree inventory? So one of the ways that we want to do that is to do more special events. And there's a lot of reason to celebrate this year. It's our 20th year as a Tree City USA. It's also the Garden Club's 100th anniversary, which is pretty cool. We have kind of let's see. Can I throw my screen up there? Or should I jump on that? Just so I can share my screen. So we have kind of a preliminary plan. We talked last time a little bit about what you would like to see for an Arbor Day event. And so we're going to do a little planning with you guys around that. I'll jump on here real quick so I can share my screen so you can look at this document. Which will be much nicer to look at. Share my screen.
stop it and try to share it. I see it on my computer.
The camera on?
There you go. Okay, so Friday, April 28th is National Arbor Day. Washington State actually has a designated Arbor Day, which is the third Wednesday in April. But I think we're just going to go ahead and align it with National Arbor Day. I don't know why states do it separately, but we did it on a Friday last year about this time. So April 20th is what we're shooting for. We're looking at an afternoon event. Kind of towards the end of the school day, since we wanted to do it in conjunction with a elementary school. So we're looking at an event about 2-3 p.m. The park is going to be dependent on which elementary school. So you guys had mentioned last meeting of either wanting to do it at Oak Harbor Elementary School or at Broadview. We have, it's really hard to navigate through this and make sure your screen. Flip the map here. I guess, sure. Sorry. Okay, so for Oak Harbor Elementary School, you can see that. Ideally within walking distance, we have volunteer park right here by the center, which is just across the street there. Down a little ways is Holland Gardens Park here. That's also doable. We do have a park over here, but that probably is going to be too far with too many major streets we want to cross. So 2 park options there. We could also do something right at the elementary school itself. Or if we were looking at Broadview Elementary School, see that there? Right here. We have Hawthorne Park, Kimball Park. Spring Tree is possible, although that's a little more of a walk to get around there. You have to help me tell you how you say this one. Lewick Park also is possible, but or we could do it right at the school itself as well.
There's
so
one other, Brian, well site 10, which is non-named yet, it's just called well site 10, and it's right up the street behind the school.
At Broadview?
Yeah.
About where is that? I can probably switch over to satellite help.
Yeah. It's right there.
Okay. Yeah, so that's a possibility as well. You can also see the school, both schools have plenty of land where we can do some plantings also. So
A long time ago, that park needed a name too, so that's something we gotta think about in the future. Well site 10 is kind of like, people don't recognize it as a park, but it is a cool park with some large fir trees in it, and it would make a neat open spot. Matter of fact, the playground to the school district has a gate in the back of it, so they could actually come from their playground area into that area there too. So there's lots of ideas there that could be very good.
okay. Thoughts on location, your preference?
Would it be possible to get a name in the works for that park by then?
I would kind of say that's on I don't have to ask Blaine a little bit how this all goes down, but is that something the board would do? Put out ideas, or we put out a pool for that, or?
We have to look at our ordinance.
Yeah.
We did it for the splash pad when I was here. We did that one in a contest, but
Might be fun to do a contest
Yeah.
with the tree stuff again and
I don't know
let
if
the
we can,
kids come up with some ideas.
yeah, I don't know if we can get an ordinance that fast. And then I don't know how much Brian's reached out to the principals of those schools too to coordinate, so,
Well, we haven't picked one yet. So,
yeah.
yeah, we can certainly do that and what we can do is have it as part of the, what, maybe it's not a naming ceremony so much as we could have naming of that park as part of the
Yeah.
event activity.
I think that
Yeah, I
would
like
be
that.
a lot of fun.
And then we can have, a couple of the kids or school representatives come and present that as a park designation with the ordinance to city council the next month. You guys like that idea? It's
Yeah, I
broad
do.
view and maybe looking at that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I like that.
Park list.
Well, so too.
Is it, it says Wellside 10 on it? Okay.
I've had a lot of people ask me over the years about that name. They're like, really? It's a park and it's called Wellsite Tanning? It's like, I never had to make a sign and put out there that says Wellsite 10 on it so people can find it.
So last year, this was kind of our stakeholder list of people that were involved with the event. We will obviously work with the principal of the school, Broadview School, and I'll get a hold of them. Our park board chairman, we'd have as part of that our communications officer, who is Sabrina now, and Michaela. If we don't need to cross any major streets, we won't worry about pulling in PD or fire, other than maybe having first aid there on hand, just when you have a lot of kids doing an event. It's always good to have. Laura from the Gary Oak Society and a rep from the Garden Club will pull into that as well. And I'll have Gideon, who is our city archaeologist. And then we also had 811 and what else did we have as part of that last year? You guys were at the event. Who else did we have on as sponsors and participants besides 811?
PSE.
PSE, that was it, yeah, PSE. So tentatively, the plan would be that on the 28th, 1 o'clock, our team would do the setup, have that all ready to go. Last year, they had shirts that they distributed to the students, and that's something that we can look at. I'll get with Sabrina if we want to look at a design for that, to do that again. And then, and I don't have a picture of the.
You want a picture of the event park?
Yeah, do you, or like what the shirts look like?
Shirts were white. They said 811 on the front. And then on the back, it had like the school's logo, the city's logo, and then PSE and other organizations that participated.
Let's see if we have. We'll do a news release. Here's one from last year. Took place at Summer Park. We had 427 students that participated in the event. So Washington 811, Ziply Fiber, Puget Sound Energy, Cascade Natural Gas Company, Tree Diaper, Corporate Promotions, our park board members, and the elementary school, as well as city administration. And we had some of the city council there, so we'll put out an invite to city council to attend as well. So going back to the itinerary for the day, we'll have volunteers and sponsors and staff. We'll get shirts. Volunteers will arrive about 1:30, as well as our park board and council members. And then 1:55, a little bit before, the students will come over with faculty, and we'll get you guys see that all right? Let me make it a little bigger. We'll get a count of students from the school for participating. We had done kindergarten through 4th grade last year, which elementary schools only go to 4th grade here, right? And then we start out with a park board welcome, introduction, and thanks, which you finally get to fulfill your dignitary obligations in that capacity. Congratulations. So I can work with you on that.
That would be great.
Yeah. And then, and it's just real brief, thanking sponsors and everyone who participated. And then right after that, the activities list. So what they did is we had 3 stations, had a tree expert talking about importance of trees, big book, which
That's what I did.
Okay, so tell us about the big book one.
And Councilmember Stuckey read is the big book, and they just read a story to the students.
Okay. And then the other one, and then the other station was doing the tree planting. So the students were all kind of broken out by grades, kinder, first, and that's, yeah, it was each by grade, yeah. And then they just rotate between the different stations. We also had, they have artifacts, which I'm guessing was done by Gideon. I could talk to him about that. Information about utilities and I think that was it. So just rotating between the different stations. And then they did an overhead group picture. And I did see a picture of that. I wish I had.
Yeah, we used a drone, and they outlined the shape. Well, Parks outlined the shape of the tree, and they stood within the outline and did an aerial.
And I think you guys all up a banner.
Yeah, it's pretty cute, right? So I think we spray painted I think that was a fir tree. You could do like an oak tree or whatever, outline, and the kids all stood in it to make the tree with the banner for the event.
The only thing about Wellside is it's pretty wooded, isn't it? I don't think you'd be able to get an aerial like that.
No,
But maybe you could do it on the school property.
on their field, maybe they'd allow, we could talk to them for an aerial shot.
Yeah, and the picture's done afterwards, so yeah, it'd be easy to pull one from the different stations to that to do the overhead drone picture.
And then would the stations be like on the school property since it's right next to the park? I'm trying to think of how much
Either way, you
room
could
there
do it in the
is.
park or maybe a combined.
The park's pretty small,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
not many
yeah.
students.
We do have some spots in there that I think would be accepting of, if we want to put a couple of trees in celebration.
Mhm.
They had some willows on the back that aren't very hardy. We've had to take out because they just split down the center. So we could replace a few trees in those areas. I think last year we put 5 in. 8. So, we put 5 or 6 trees in with the kids help, and we pre-dug the holes so they were soft and everything.
And then one of the stations would be the park naming contest, right? And then we did popsicles and swag bags last year as well. So that's something we could definitely put together again. And then the students headed out and we cleaned up. Thoughts on all that? Mostly I just wanted to get your guys' opinion on the location. And if you're good with kind of following the same sort of program we did last year, we'll go through that again. From what I heard, is really successful and everyone had a really good time. And it was a great PR thing. We're definitely going to promote it a little more. And take that picture and get the would-be times involved with it as well. Input, thoughts, concerns?
I'm excited.
Okay, I'll work down.
You just like to party.
So I'll work with you on your amazing speech,
Yes.
reports to trees, and maybe Laura can help us with those too.
You got my number.
All right, that's all I had for Arbor Day. Oh, sorry, one more thing. So along with that, we are also doing a proclamation for Arbor Day, and that'll go before council that meeting right before. So that is.
Oh, did you want to share? I stopped sharing your screen.
That'll be April 18th. We'll do a proclamation for Arbor Day. We'll also present our Tree City USA designation as well, and talk a little bit about the Arbor Day event. We were going to do that at the next workshop, but I think what we said, let's just do it with the proclamation. So we'll just have information about the Arbor Day event on the administrator's report that Blaine will share with council. And then when we do the proclamation, we'll do a official invite to the event and present a little bit about what we're doing, since we'll have everything all put together by then, and Tree City USA. So it'd be great to have maybe the chair or the parks, as many of the parks board as can make it to that evening for that presentation. And then anything you want to share with it, or if you want to give the official invite from council to participate with the event, that'd be great.
Okay. As long as you don't need the city engineer at that meeting, I can definitely do that.
Yeah, we can make that work. Move his items around.
That's it for me.
So next item on the agenda is powers and duties draft.
Okay. I'll share my screen again, but this is the one that I sent to you, Mikhail. I don't know if you have the one with both our changes, yours and mine together.
Not completely.
Okay.
I was working on it on Friday.
That's all right. That's it.
But I can show them they were incorporated. So last year, about mid-year, we looked at the bylaws, bringing it up to date to code, and then with the revision that the board approved last week, making you a Parks and Recreation Board, Brian prepared the ordinance to do that, and it's under the city attorney's review. So.
And I can share with you some of the changes. So Mikhail had already been working on updates to these. Oh, can you give me the screen again? Okay, there we go. So these are just my additions to what she had already changed, and it's not showing what she had changed. So she had already gone in and made a whole bunch of updates. And this has those updates in there. It just doesn't have them marked. So we changed her name from the park board to the Parks and Recreation Board. And that's changed throughout. And then really the bulk of it is just the addition of a couple of items here, specifically we reprogrammed and then we just added in verbiage detailing that a little more, as well as advising city council regarding all these things. So the main 3 paragraph additions are: the board shall advise the city council regarding the planning, promotion, and operation of the city's recreation programs, senior services, community special events, and other life enrichment programming. The board shall advise city council regarding the planning, implementation, and promotion of the city's Tree City USA designation, investigate, study, and report to the city council on such matters concerning the city's urban tree canopy, planting, maintenance, and removal of street trees and landscaping, the protection and conservation of naturalized open spaces, and the beautification of the city's public spaces. And then the last one is the board shall investigate, study, and advise city council on grants, donations, and other forms of funding to assist in the operation of the city's recreational facilities and programs, and to otherwise advise city council on budgetary needs related to the operations of the Parks and Recreation Department. So that expands the power and duties, really kind of the responsibility or scope of what you're going to be basing your priorities and your yearly goals and objectives and what you want to talk about in this body, as well as what you'll be working on with staff beyond just park facilities, which was encapsulated in this first paragraph. And yeah, so adds in recreational programming, emphasis on city trees, and then also working with me on donations and all the different alternative funding that we'll be going after for doing some of these things. And we can send this out. I don't know how much more do we have as far as tweaks, or do you anticipate any major additions other than little tweaks?
No.
I guess what I'm asking is, should we ask the board to look through this and pass a motion of recommendation for adoption now, or do you want to?
No, let's wait till we have a final draft.
Okay, yeah, we'll do that. So in the meantime, I'll email this out and let you guys take a look at it. And if you want to just email me back with any thoughts or things that you feel additions. Just about every city has something like this for powers and duties for Parks and Recreation Board. So I always find what's helpful is, instead of trying to come up with something out of the air, hey, what's best practice, right? So what are other cities doing that, or are there issues that you feel are vital for this board to be able to advise and give recommendations to council on that aren't encapsulated in this, that you want to flesh out a little more? So we're happy to take any of those recommendations and incorporate those.
Okay.
That's kind of it. So that's kind of the direction that we're going with it, kind of what we talked about at the last meeting that we put in here. From your guys' comments.
All right. You ready for your report?
I am, if you guys don't have any other comments. Yeah.
Any other questions about that? Okay, you're up.
Okay. Let's see here. So the city had a leadership team meeting back on February 27th, where we laid out kind of what are we wanting to take care of now? What are our priorities coming up in the next couple of years, and kind of into the future? What are some of the major things that we're looking at doing? So for our department, we have for what we call now playing in the 2023-2024 area, we're completing a feasibility study for the marina dredging and redesign, and the Mariners Haven purchase with the marina, starting to develop and implement recreation, arts, events, and life enrichment programming, which will be headed up by me and Liz Lang, who is our current senior services supervisor. That'll become our recreation department. And then we're purchasing a shuttle for doing a senior travel program, and some facilities to the center for the roof, and then also looking at planning around permissive parking lot, which has some issues there. So with the creation of a Parks and Recreation Board, you want to keep in mind that the department also works with arts and events, the marina, senior services. Now, senior services definitely will be a major topic of what we do in this board, along with recreational programmings. But we do have another advisory board for the marina that, for the time now, will stay autonomous in its own commission, and then we also have an arts commission as well. But I imagine we'll probably do some joint sessions with both of those as we kind of go in the future. Coming attractions or things from the next budget year, 2025, 2026, Parks and Recreation Master Plan, our department's organization and budget restructure, changing our senior services into that kind of recreation department. Start of park systems improvements, including the installation of accessible playground, which we talked about last time, a public art plan, developing that and starting to implement that, and then installing some trail systems. Now keep in mind, even though we have these for, hey, here's what we have budget for that we're working on now, here's for the next budget and into the future. Some of those things that are in the next budget and in the future, we're working on right now, right? There's some planning that needs to happen and putting funding in place and things like that. So into the future, 2029 and beyond, a community recreation center, performing arts center, gold medal award for excellence in parks and recreation management. And really what that speaks to is communication or telling the story of what we're doing in the department, right? So some of these initiatives like Arbor Day, really getting out, hey, here's all the great things that we're doing to improve quality of life for the community. And part of that is going through the gold medal award program through the National Parks and Recreation Association, getting accredited by the National Parks and Recreation Association, things like that. The marina rebuild and a boardwalk connection to downtown from the marina and a regional sports complex. So those are all things kind of in the works that we want to be able to check off the list by 2029 or into the future from there. Getting those things going now. We are taking in council some structural changes. So we're looking at putting a park supervisor. We already have an arborist approved, and we anticipate that Bob is going to fill that position. We are asking for an additional parks specialist and then a program coordinator for our recreational programs that will also help us with the leagues. We have our new civic rec program that will kind of automate online field rentals and things like that. And we could probably put a lot of different things in that require registration or online forms for applications like memorial requests and different stuff like that. Maybe in one of our future meetings, we'll do a demo walkthrough of that and how that works, and get your guys' thoughts on the user interface. Do you feel like it's intuitive, that it's user friendly? What if you've used it before to sign your kids up for a program? What's your frustrations when you do that? Any kind of feedback that you might have on our front-facing technology. We are waiting for the city's bucket truck to get out maintenance, and then we're going to be doing a maintenance project with the Navy for Gateway Park, where we have the two planes, the Growler, and what's the other one?
The planes on the stick.
I'm trying to remember what the other plane is. So one's a Growler and the other is a
A6 and E6B.
Yeah,
so even intruder in it. Probably.
Yeah. So the Navy needs about a couple of weeks, so we plan in the next month to be able to get that project done. And they've needed some work for quite a while, so we'll be doing power washing on this project, and then we'll also be looking at it for painting this year. So they'll get quite a bit of touch up. Along with that, we're going to look at the landscaping as well as putting in a little parking lot so people can come and do a little photo op thing and kind of making it look nice to be able to do photo ops with. So that's a project we're working on right now. For Windjammer Park, we are working through what some of those improvements for this next phase will be. We have about 1.3 million that was budgeted for that phase. So that's something we'll probably put on a future agenda as well. We're trying to move a little faster than normal on that one, just because it'd be great to have some of those things in place for the summer season. A big part of that, I think, is making some improvements and repairs to the splash pad. And then also probably we'll have a discussion on the name. So I'm the new guy. I don't have a lot of history with the city, but I've heard all kinds of stuff. So it used to be named City Beach Park, right? And there's a lot of feelings back and forth about that. Right now, we still have a street that's called City Beach that goes to Windjammer Park. And for new people that move in the area, they don't know any differently. It's fine. But there's a lot of people that have a history of the city that would either like to see it go back to the name City Beach for the park, or we should change the street name or whatever. We still actually have a park designation sign for City Beach's stone sign. That's fairly nice. Something that you might want to think about discussing on whether we want to keep the name Windjammer, whether we want to change the street name, whether we want to change the name of the park. One thought was, we call it City Beach and name one of the playgrounds Windjammer Playground. If we put in a new, like a new adapted playground or something like that, which we'd probably do on the west side, along with some pavilions, because it's a lot of unused, underutilized space on that west side of the park. So just some upcoming things to kind of think about.
How long has it been Windjammer?
About 20 years.
Yeah.
There was a may I speak?
Yeah.
Okay. There was an economic development consultant that came in and decided that Windjammer with the association of the sailing regatta that we used to be able to host here in Oak Harbor. And then the building of the bus station down there across from the Flintstone Park was sort of a theme of beachy look to it, was all part of that plan. So I want to say it's been about 20 years, but since the beginning of City Beach Park, everyone and old timers like me still call it City Beach Park. And I think that's what Rotary paid to have the stone sign say City Beach Park. Rotary was heavily involved in the creation of that park when that was all still marshland.
I was looking to see if I had a picture of the sign, because it's about probably 6,000 pounds, the concrete sign we have sitting up there and the emblems on it, but I can see if I can get that for next meeting if you guys like to see what it looks like. So,
Are there sensitivities to the Windjammer designation or not?
I don't know how we put that out to the public even to.
I mean, why are we considering it now, I guess?
I guess because it's an opportunity, as we do some improvements out there. 1.3 is not going to get us everything that everyone would want in that park, but one park's not going to be everything to everyone anyway. Especially along with our improvements to the park and a shoreline restoration, that making improvements to kind of our beach area that connects all the way from Fred Marsh out to the marina. Just that refresh and some new amenities and things out there. It's a time that if we were to make a change with installation of some of those improvements, is a good time to do it. And I think it's only a consideration because we hear so often from the public about that.
What are you hearing from the public?
Oh, it should be changed back to City Beach. That's mostly what we hear, is that the park name should go back to City Beach. Because there's a City Beach street that goes into the park, and I think that's probably what brings people's memory back about it so much, is follow City Beach Avenue to Windjammer. But
I've never heard anyone say, I really love Windjammer Park. It should stay Windjammer Park. It's always, I wish it was still City Beach Park.
Yeah.
So I don't think people care.
And you never know. I mean,
Windjammer
when you bring, change anything, people come out of the woodwork that you didn't realize cared about and stuff. But,
It seems to me that it's a marketing question in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
And in my line of thinking, doing marketing decisions before we actually have like comprehensive planning is sort of a cart before the horse kind of thing. It makes sense more to me to have that conversation in light of master planning and a bigger vision, and then see what it may even want to name itself in light of a bigger plan, rather than name something and then come up with a vision only later to find out that like our name no longer fits into this greater vision that we have for parks.
Yeah.
And now we find ourselves in a I'll say the Oak Harbor Circle of sort of ad hoc decision making, and then having regret afterwards. You
Yeah,
know?
no, I totally agree with that. In fact, a good example of that is, one of the things we're looking at is renovation of what's called Catalina Park next to the marina, and turning that into a sandy, swimmable location where Windjammer isn't necessarily a good swimming location. We have the lagoon, but and the lagoon is fine, but out in just the water right there, we have several outfalls. And so there are times of the year where the bacteria levels can get high enough that it's not I think we have some health signs there of, hey, swim at your own risk. So I don't know if we want to necessarily promote it as, hey, this is the beach area to go and swim in the water. Or especially if we're looking at another location where we might want to, maybe we change the name of Catalina Park to City Beach Park and try and move people down there to enjoy this new beach that we put in. So you're absolutely right. There's planning that needs to go around it. But again, just an item to kind of have it in your mind of a future discussion as we go along or playing out some of these initiative things.
I think changing the name to the Match the Road is a good idea too, because then when people coming out of town will go, oh, City Beach Street, City Beach, or if you were to name it Windjammer, Lane or whatever, then they would know, oh, it's Windjammers off of that road, might help with some of the traffic flow and stuff like that, summer months.
Yeah. I said, it's been like 20 years, so people have really long memory. For someone that's new in the community, I don't care what it's called. I don't have a tie to that necessarily, but all right. Our special event applications are now on the website now, instead of going through like we were using Survey Monkey right before. So a lot easier, hopefully, to do special event permits. I know we have a few tournaments that are going to be done at the parks this year. That's really exciting to hear about.
Can I mention something?
Yeah,
one thing we'd like to do this year too is take a holistic look at the parks and what's available to rent and how people rent them. So for instance, now in Windjammer, you can rent kitchens, you can rent the pavilion. We do have a field reservation, but we don't have any rental of open space. So if someone wants to do something in open space, they don't pay, they pay a special event fee, but they don't pay to rent that part of the park if they're not using the kitchen. So we'd like to, as staff and the Parks Board, take a holistic look at the parks and make sure that our fee schedule is meeting, the needs and of what's being rented. So that will come shortly too, I think.
We have some preliminary drawings being drawn up with some of the parks, possible spaces, and even the soccer fields is how we can divide them out and share them a little bit more with other people coming from maybe even off island, but just different groups. And then we also will be able to, we're hoping through the city website, be able to, in Civic Rec, that everyone will know what everyone's doing before they even get to the park. So that way, if you need soccer, will be scheduled all their practices and their game nights in. And we just hope there makes a little bit more room, because it seems like we're getting really bound up with a lot of people wanting to use the same space. So we got to program it out more.
Yeah, I think we have 3 basketball tournaments. That one used the courts in Windjammer, and it's currently not a rentable facility. So we're making provisions, but just it's good to see the park used.
Last 2 things. There will be a city open house coming up on.
We changed the date. April. Sorry. I should know that.
City Hall.
Yeah, City Hall is coming up in April.
April 12th. It's
12th.
a Wednesday evening.
And they'll be here highlighting city services, but we'll also do a separate one for Parks and Recreation and Public Works. I don't think we have a tentative date for that one yet.
No, but it'll be in May, because May is Public Works recognition a month, and they have a week in there. So it'll probably be sometime in May that the Public Works campus and Parks and Rec facility.
Okay. So as soon as I get a little more information on that, I'll send it out to you guys. I'd love your help to just get the word out about that, especially with, the new department and we have kind of this grandiose vision of all these great things that the community has wanted for years and years and years, and really haven't had a specialized department focused on those things. So as we start developing some of these plans, especially looking at getting into an update of our parks and recreation plan, getting people out and just hearing feedback and talking about some of the services that we provide and some of the new systems we have in place and ways that the community will be able to register for programs or see what events are coming up that weekend or what new amenities are at parks and how to reserve a shelter for a family reunion this summer or things like that. So we'll send that out to you. Last thing real quick here, I'm going to share my screen one more time, Kel. When you're ready, I'd like to go through this exercise with you guys to really flesh out what should this commission be focusing on. I'd like to get a work session with you and council. We'll probably do that maybe in June. So July is National Parks and Recreation Month. It was designated by the House. We're going to do a proclamation for that with council. But I'd like for them to go over with you what you're working on. Make sure that aligns with what their vision. Several of them have very strong feelings on what Parks and Recreation should be doing. And so how this works is, and I'll show you an example. This is the art commission. I built this out for them. We're going to do the same thing for you guys. And what I put in this first column here, I'll make this a little bigger so you can see easier, is your powers and duties. So we take that whole document that we just went over of what your powers and duties are, and we break it out into each of those specific criteria of powers and duties and put them in one of these boxes. Then from that, we have you guys list out, well, what are the key issues with that? So here, as example, foster arts program and arts and cultural programs and venues for the enrichment of the city and its citizens. So some of the key issues are, how do we connect with the art community? How do we create, special events that celebrate the arts or things like that? You'll do the same thing for your powers and duties. What are the key issues in each of those powers and duties that you feel are the main issues that we want to address in this board? And then from those key issues, you're going to put in goals of different things that you want to work on or maintain, monitor. That could be something like, updating the city's code for street trees. Maybe it's looking at and guiding the development of recreational programs. What's missing. It could be things like, addition of special events for the city and how should that be budgeted, things like that. Then you'll create an action item for those goals and those priorities for that year. And those will be things that you'll create committees or have staff work on, or you work with staff on, and then you assign a responsible commissioner and or staff that are working on each of those action items. So each month when we meet, we'll give you guys during your comment period time to kind of report back, hey, so this month, this is what we worked on with, the planning for the new adaptive playground and installation of that. And so we kind of keep track as we go along so that we're able to kind of check each of those boxes, by the end of the year. Now we limit it to 4 because in my experience, that's as much as you guys can take. You're volunteers, you have lives, you do this once a month. I'm going to put you to work a little bit, but not in a way that's going to be painful. This is mostly going to be on staff, but something that we want you guys to be involved with, that you can go back to council and say, hey, here's the powers and duties you gave us. And out of that, these are the main issues that we're working on. And here's the goals that we have for this year and the action items here's what we've accomplished. And here's what we're bringing back to you, council, that we're working on staff. That's kind of the idea, very, very high level, quick discussion of it. But if you kind of like that format and that's something that you guys want to sit down and work on and put together, I will send this to you and we'll kind of work on this over the next meeting or 2.
Yeah, no, I like that.
That sounds all right. Okay. This will roll into the start of an update to our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And that's it for me.
Are there any park board member comments?
Yeah, Brian, you said you're gonna mention pickleball court and possibly other project status. Did you have an update on, that was something that you had mentioned last time, I think.
So the pickleball court, we have an agreement that was put together, a memorandum of understanding with the school district that we would put some REIT funds, real estate exercise tax. There's not an E in there somewhere.
REE,
REET.
real estate exercise tax.
Yeah, two E's, real
Real
estate.
estate exercise tax.
Real and then E.
Oh, yeah, two words.
Real
estate. So REIT funding for $50,000 towards renovation of these pickleball courts that are on school district property. Dawn had sent out requests for some estimates from a couple of contractors, and nothing really ever happened after that point since like May of last year. So it's just kind of been on the shelf since then. As we've looked at all the different projects we're doing and priorities, we took a look at this. One of the concerns is, well, this is school district property. It's a school district asset and we don't program it. So in the agreement, the agreement stipulated that, okay, the city would do the renovations in exchange for our programming of the facility, but it's the recreation district that programs out of the facility. So I don't have any problem contributing or even running a school district project to renovate those courts. But a couple of things would need to happen. One, 50,000 is not going to get us what's on that scope. We could probably repaint some lines, but we're not going to be able to like scrape and resurface and deal with the root problem and all that kind of different stuff. It needs a fence around it as well for $50,000. So we either need the school district to contribute and make up that shortfall since it's their property and their courts, or the recreation district who actually programs on those courts. Honestly, I think this ought to go back to council and have another look at it and this discussion on whether this is something that the city wants to take on for the school district or not. Council did ask us to bring it back in April. So what I'm doing right now is just getting some cost estimates, maybe even go out and get a bid for what the work is. So we have an actual number than just throwing an arbitrary 50,000 at it that we can work on. So that's kind of where it is. But we'll also present some alternatives as well, some options. Okay, do you want to do this for the school district, or do we want to expand pickleball and build some new facilities? You know, I don't know for sure until we get the cost estimates, but you know, for maybe another 50,000 on top of that, we could build whole new courts somewhere else, and then you have additional pickleball playability options. So yeah, so we're working on a couple different options and we'll see which direction the city council wants to go. If you guys have any thoughts on it, if you feel we should stick with the current MOU and just do what we can within that 50,000, that's one option. If you feel like we need to go after additional funding to do the entire scope that was originally planned, and work with the school district and the recreation district to try and make that happen, that's another option. Should we look at, hey, if we're going to put money into something, let's put it into city property and build some new pickleball courts. One good option would be right south of Fort Nugent from the the basketball courts is a perfect footprint to put some new pickleball courts in there as well. Windjammer Park is a good location.
Originally Neal Park, before that was scheduled, that was where they were gonna put new pickleball courts in. But that project, it struggled. I think they had too many courts in there. You know, it was too big of a chunk to bite off at one time. And yeah, so that's another park in the neighborhood there that could accept something like that. We have lots of places that could use a little upgrading that way. So I think I think it's a neat idea that have the possibility of upgrading our own stuff too.
I think Neil Park makes so much sense. Ever since the gardens went out of there, there's nothing that happens there. It took Girl Scouts really. I mean, there's a cool playground that got put in there, which is great to revitalize that, but that's been a grass field. I mean, I think when I was a kid was the last time that was used for anything, which was like the lowest age soccer. And there were the gardens that were there, but that's a great space. There's no trees because that
Has a parking lot.
yeah, this part, that area where those tennis courts are, those either kill those trees or you're always going to be doing maintenance there. It's not, they already have an agreement with Northwood Parks and Rec. Let them have that place. I think that plan is, for lack of a better word, foolish.
I'm a little with you on the leery of working around
Yeah.
the trees. I mean, and if we killed one of those, now we're responsible for
Yeah.
taking it down and so, yeah.
And that's the charm of that space right there is those cool trees, that nice grove of trees there in the kind of the middle of that area. And to have to worry about any of that, for 40 years, those courts have been a root problem.
Yeah, it's supposed to heavily shaded. We don't get real hot during the summer here. My feeling is it should be a little more open space, but regardless, I think we should kickstart something just to get it off the shelf.
Sure.
And,
I think it would.
however we go.
And it wouldn't always
There are no public courts here, to my knowledge. Is that right?
Yeah, the recommendation from some people who came to the council was to convert Sumner Park, one of the tennis courts in there, but then he's got to make sure that we're not taking away from there too. So, but certainly
And parking's limited
pickleball
there.
was designed to go into tennis courts, and so it does have.
The Sumner Park, though, the tennis club has done such a magnificent job of taking ownership of that over years and actually putting people on it that it would sort of be a shame for them to have to compete. It would kind of be, when nobody was really doing anything for tennis, those folks did a great job making sure that place stayed clean. I mean, and I think they did a phenomenal job as far as civic contribution there. It would be sort of frustrating, I think, for them to have to share with pickleballers after all that work. It could be wrong, but that's my impression.
But there is room there to add
Additional, yeah.
if you wanted to add more courts, even that's another location that you could consider.
Yeah.
I do worry a little bit, like I said, about parking and, for lots of people. That's one of the neat things Neil, I think, has to offer is it has a paved parking lot there with Girl Scouts that could be shared. The thing to consider though with Neil, I think, would be the potential of it, if you ever wanted to put a soccer field in there, maybe where you place it, because you could potentially, there's a lot of other things you could do there too. That's just kind of untapped resource for us.
I think as far as like the soccer issue, if you want to do that, usually those smaller parks, it's only the U6 group.
Yep.
So they don't need a whole lot of room.
There's enough there for everyone to have
Yeah.
there. And there's a parking lot on the other side of Holland Gardens too. So there's actually 2 parking lots in that park. So.
There's a whole slew of these kind of projects where we sort of put them on the books without a lot of planning or back thought or funding or budgeting behind it. So I hear the comments. I know the community is really anxious for a lot of these things that they feel like they've been waiting on for forever. But as we just created this new Parks and Recreation Department, we're taking a very hard look at each of these projects, prioritizing them, seeing, okay, well, what makes sense? What's the highest and best use of some of these? What do we actually have funding for? What do we need to go after more funding for? Where do we need to get some partners to get some of this stuff done? So one thing I definitely want to make sure is that we don't go into projects backwards, where we just sort of, hey, you know what, we really should do this. Okay, that's great. Let's do that. Throw it on the books and without a lot of planning behind it or doing it the way it should be done. Pickleball courts are a little bit of that. But we have a whole bunch of other ones like that. So, that speaks again to why a good Parks and Recreation plan is so important, because that kind of informs you like, hey, this is where you need to have these kinds of sports courts, right? It tells you exactly where you're missing assets there for the community. So,
and I think we don't have to have that biggest sense of urgency on pickleball. I mean, they are still using those courts over there by the middle school. Roller Barn has indoor going on right now. There are facilities for people to use that stuff. So we don't have to do it outside of a greater vision. You know, I think maybe scrapping the idea of going forward with that MOU might be a good idea, but in putting it back in context of sort of a greater plan, because right now there are facilities for people to do that. We don't have to invest money and find out again that it was outside of plan or outside of the proper phase and be patient, which isn't my strong suit.
I know, I want it.
So that's kind of the update is, yeah, we're pulling all these things off that have been sitting on the shelf for a year or more off the shelf and taking a good hard look at it. And we're either going to reevaluate or replan, or we will push forward very quickly with it, depending on what council wants to do.
Do we have a master list of everything that's sort of been kind of in those kinds of terms of works that we can,
we have a capital, yeah, so we have a capital
yeah.
projects list.
Yeah.
And we can kind of add to that a lot of other things that weren't put on that capital list. That's gonna be like a whole.
Yeah, I think it might be helpful for this group to understand what's all been discussed or had an iron in the fire or something, so we understand sort of the nature of what we're working with and also what other people have thought or imagined.
And honestly, a lot of those capital projects, like, there's not really funding for them. They're just sort of placeholder, right?
I think that might help. I think it would certainly help me kind of understand what vision has been sort of created in whatever way versus what we're trying to do, and then walk that line, because I'm sure there's lots of passion and time put into all of those things that we want to be making sure we're guarding and honoring that while also looking towards the future.
I think
That seems like it works in perfectly what you just put out there as far as the planning document
Right.
and goals and, so you have everything on place. You can use that as prioritization.
Yeah. Exactly. So how that comes out is you have about 24 deliverables, right? And in my experience, like, that's about as max as a department can do, right? So that's like 2 major projects a month, or 2 projects or things that you guys list as, hey, these are what's important for us and we want to implement this year. And that's a pretty good list. So.
And just for reference, the capital projects plan is on the city's website. So I can email you all out a link, but if you want to see that, it is posted on the website.
Does that cover the things that are official and the things that are sort of unofficial but potentially have assumed weight behind them? Because I assume there's a few of those as well.
I don't know if
Am I
it's
wrong?
everything. It's everything that's at least listed in the budget, capital projects in the budget.
Enough. I'll find it. Thank you.
I can send that out to you. I wonder if the other thing you were talking about, is that the restrooms? Because I think someone had said, hey, we want to put restrooms on here, but I don't know.
Oh, that was me. That was about the Fort Nugent restrooms.
Okay.
Is that, are you done?
Yeah.
Oh, so
As far as I know.
I wanted to bring that up because I know there's been like the vandalism issues, which is not pleasant for anyone. So right now they close at 3 p.m. So starting next month is when rec programs really get underway, and there's going to be community programming out there until probably about 6:30 on Saturdays. We're already out there until about 6:37 during the week, but for Saturdays, would it be an option to, like, if we contact you guys to get them?
Yeah, so this is something we've
longer?
talked about. Go ahead, Todd.
So we have installed, and they are operational now, time locks on them. So they are operating from 6 to 6 right now.
Oh, from
functioning.
6 to
The
6?
sign is just buffaloing people out there, trying to
Okay.
keep them out of there, thinking that, and the next step's probably gonna be that we'll be talking about is potentially putting in a sensor in there so that it will have a light come on outside, kind of like the Loos do that now. They changed the lights. But we were thinking about doing something like that in the future so that when the police drive by, if they're in there after hours, they would be able to know, because the lights on it would be on, so they'd know they'd have to stop and check it out. It's just, there's a lot of little updating of the equipment and technology, basically, that we kind of do around our parks to keep. And I was gonna bring that up even with tech, everything we're talking about here, how we program it out, how we lay it out, so we can have a more successful rate on what we're doing. So like those bathrooms, I think we're being very successful with the time locks in there, because they're coming in the late evening to do their damage, those people are. We for sure, and that's part of with tech, civic rec and all that coming aboard, we'll know when the practices are. If they're running later in the evening, we can adjust the time accordingly on that. I don't think we want to give them a whole bunch of extra time after that. I mean, when practice is done, we want the locks to start going. Even before that, I would consider something like certain key members of the groups, giving them keys so that they could unlock it for the kids. Because we just don't want to leave the doors open to some of this stuff anymore. They just get so violent on our equipment. And it is, I would say, cost on maintaining this equipment has gone up in the last 5 years like double. It's crazy. How many man hours I got to send crews out to scrub paint off or to scrub things that just shouldn't be having a concern about, but we are. So tech is our friend. We'll plan accordingly and share it with the ones we want to share it with, the clubs, the leagues, that sort of thing. And the other thing I got to stress is be boisterous with the police. If you're out there using it, please call and notify. Every time we make a record, that is a good thing, because now they can go, we've had this many incidences in every month, and report it to council and so on and so forth. We need to talk about it. We really do. So we have plans. We got locks. That was a good thing. Next step, let's put some lights on it, different lights on it. Maybe, Brian, I've talked even potentially in the long term of a camera system out there, like windjammers. But the issue with the camera system out there right now, technology has come a long ways, is the Wi-Fi capabilities, getting internet access out there at Fort Nugent. But I do think that it would be a good idea to spend the money on that sort of equipment, and it'll last for many years and provide help for the police department and us to recognize what they're doing. Maybe we change the lock time on it a little bit to stop them from doing what they're doing out there. One of the other things is security on the back fence of the perimeter of the property. I've looked at that for a long time and wondered if we just made the rest of the fence go on back across the Fort Nugent. It's halfway across now. Would that slow it down? I don't think we're ever going to fully solve it, but we can slow it down,
Yeah, I think that's a tremendous idea, because we've pushed all the homeless folks out of the walking trails. When I say we, I mean would be on the disc golf club, by either cleaning them up or asking them to move, or with the help of police, and removing a lot of the areas of large invasive species and brush where they were camping under. But now they've just gone over there. And because that walking trail passes that way and it feels like a thoroughfare, and the neighborhood uses it over there, that's where they hang out, and then they come from there.
I would like to widen that trail all the way around so that the police they do come into the park, and they like to use that back upper gate to sneak in to see if anyone's in there, but where they could drive all the way around basically the perimeter. You can see down on the soccer fields if someone's down there messing around, but that back wooded area is kind of no man's land in the middle of the night. So it wouldn't be too hard to gravel it and make it a little bit wider, put a culvert in back there. They could drive all the way around potentially in the future. So there's some things we can do and we can talk about for sure.
Yeah. Well, and where they've moved in the most recent spots has been in little pockets of dry land inside where it's wettest. And that's where I've had to remove them most recently, so that would get missed. But I think there could be some thinning work that would be done for line of sight for y'all, so it wouldn't have to be so difficult. And it wouldn't be hard to dry some of that stuff up too, and then take some of that stuff out for line of sight.
And as soon as you get done with your disc golf up there, we're going to move you to another spot and have you thin it for us too there.
On it. You put the baskets, we will work. That's how that works.
Just a general comment. I'm a newbie here, so I've been living in the city for about 6 years, 3 years prior and 3 years now. And this is new to me, the board. So I'm a little confused. I'm getting a little better picture now after sitting through a couple of these, is how do we go about tackling all these things? So I think, Brian, your approach of listing all these things as issues and goals and action items and assigning people to them is critical, because we can't discuss all this stuff in this format. It's just not workable. There's too much stuff.
And you need to have.
I don't feel right voting for something that I don't know the issues that you're talking about right now, as far as trails and homeless inhabitants and wetlands and all those things. So for the smaller groups to work those details and bring those forward with more information and a recommendation, to me makes a lot more sense than hitting and missing in this group. So I encourage that you go forward with that. And it would be helpful to me, especially.
I'll take you on a field trip,
base.
Tom.
Huh?
I'll take you on a field trip anytime out of Port.
Yeah, I know.
Me and Tally can go on a walk.
Yeah, you would, and then, yeah, and then somebody else might take me on a field trip for another specific
Yeah.
item. There's
Yeah, how full's your schedule?
I'm wide open to doing any of that. The more knowledge I have, the better I can serve this board and community.
Yeah, because the highest use of these boards and commissions is that you guys are researching and working with staff on issues, and then you are taking an action item to council, right? That you guys have vetted and worked on, and saying, council, we recommend this change in the code. We recommend this funding for this kind of a project. We'll use this board as a good community input format as well. Invite the public, come and give you guys comments, but ultimately, I don't want you guys to just, hey, me report to you, hey, this is what the department's doing. And you guys nod your head and say, wow, that sounds great. Okay. And let's break. You guys should be a branch of council appointed by them to take items back to them for their consideration, right? Because they have to make major decisions based off of like a week or two of information, right? So your guys' function is to get into the nitty gritty and the weeds of all that and really vet it out and get community input, and then bring that all back to council and say, hey, here's the work that we've done on this and our recommendation on how you should make a decision or proceed in that direction.
That's also true the next step down.
Right.
We don't have all of that knowledge either. So having smaller working groups and putting together presentations or recommendations.
I think that's been some of the trouble with the pickleball initiative too, is that we didn't have all our homework done. And I think you're right on track there with where we need to go with that. So we need to build up the plan, have some contract numbers, then we can take it to you, then we can move on forward like it's supposed to. But right now it's been kind of like, well, let's hurry up and shoot this out there. And it didn't, that's why it struggled and has had issues. So better homework, more research, and I think we'll be successful.
Seriously, I am new, and I'd be more than happy to go, see what you're talking about or anybody else is talking about, because that'd be a great help to me.
Let's set up a time before you leave. We'll go on a field trip to Fort Midget.
That's actually not a bad idea. Like if you guys have never been out to Harbor Heights, you definitely should take a field trip out there. Looking at the area around the center and Oak Harbor Elementary School, and kind of what we're looking at there with Memorial Park and Fort Nugent and what the issues are there. Couple of field trip meetings might not be a bad idea.
Nothing like putting your feet on it and actually seeing it and going, oh, that's what they're up against. Well, we understand.
It seems like it's going to make some sense for those of us that are in this to actually be leading one of those smaller groups, dividing the labor that way, finding the things that we're passionate about, figuring out what's a sensible separation of those groups, and then us figuring out which ones we want to be working on to do that work. Otherwise, I fear that we won't be well enough informed still if we're not, intimately involved in one of those groups or even helping lead and steer it. That way we can actually bring back that work and be willing to pump the brakes on anything that's happening, so we aren't just rubber stamping stuff that staff has done and that city council has done as well, and so being in a place to hold that tension between those two.
Like I said, I'll fill in that first column with your powers and duties broken out as is getting presented so far, and then you guys can I'll fill out the rest.
All right. Any other comments from board members?
I can take one. You're on my list that Brian didn't have on his for priorities, so it became a priorities was working with the school district. So certainly it wasn't good that the bond didn't pass for the school district, and I think I wish the community would support them. But the correlation with that is it did have the Fort Nugent School. They intend to put it there. Part of the planning the reason why the city spent 1.1 million to buy the Harbor Heights Sports Complex property is a replacement from that. And then are there other short-term alternatives we could work on? So there's already discussion going on. It will continue with the school district on where we do our short-term priorities on it. I think they're learning the complexity here, because I don't think the school district knew there was a disc golf course on a number of their 20 acres, a number of holes on their 20 acres went around the edge, and other things that they have to do on it. So the good thing is it bought us a little bit more time for planning, but I think we certainly need to continue planning with the school district and that property transitioning, the 20 acres that they own, transitioning from a park where it's been for 30 years to a school district property, and they intend to take it on. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I think they'll get the votes at some time, and maybe the apprehensiveness with that converting from soccer and other usage to school district might have been some effect on the voters. So I think the school district will make that a priority to continue to work on.
One other comment I think I have is I've had conversations on a different topic, something I'm involved in with North Woodby Parks and Rec. And one of the senses I got in that meeting with the director and some other people was a lot of confusion about partnership or not with the other entities that do programming or other stuff. So like us. And then the school district as well. And I don't know, I guess I'm curious as to how we can figure out how to make that partnership more profitable, more symbiotic. It seemed like there was I was experiencing some tension, let's just say, as far as some of those thoughts, and they were in regards to some of that space in the land, like the pickleball court and different things like that, and their programming versus city programming. And I'm wondering if we could do something with, or figure out maybe how to make that relationship clearer and more useful. That way we can maximize footprint for the one, so we're not doing the same things they are, unless they're not doing it well. And then also just making sure that because even though it's a city, it's going to take care of the region. It's going to draw because of the resources and the beauty of the city. So how do we manage that relationship well so we can maximize impact? So if they exist, we might as well use them to their own advantage as well. You know what I mean? And build off of each other to improve the entire community. And my experience in that meeting was that, there's a lot of confusion here as to how we can work together or not. And maybe some sense of competition, which I didn't feel to be probably advantageous for either group, and probably a waste of resources.
Yeah, I think in some cases they are working towards the same pot of money.
Right.
Yeah, that's a struggle.
So I went and presented to that group last week, and it was just a introductory hi, yes, who I am, and just kind of an overview of some of our vision and priorities that we're working on, just from that list that I shared with you guys, same stuff, and just opened up hey, I'd love to find ways that we can partner and support you guys in your levy initiatives, and obviously it's not beneficial to be redundant in any way, but if we can find gaps in services and amenities that the community really wants, then it's kind of why this department was built, to address those. So.
Anything else? Okay, then let's go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 11:52.
You guys have anything that you want on the